Hello everybody, Tyrone the God 3 here, and welcome back to Pokemon Universe Fanfic Series. Today we will be doing the review of the episode 6, Coda's Head, Tailow's New Nest. So, this episode, I was writing this episode, and there's a lot of things I'm proud of in this episode. Honestly, this episode had one goal and one goal in general, and that was to introduce the new Pokemon, Taillow. Because, Taillow is going to be one of the new Pokemon that travels with our heroes because it's Coda's Pokemon. And that was initially the only goal for this. And I had a pretty straightforward plot to go with it in a running gag. And then the episode later on turned into something way bigger than I expected. And I liked it a lot for that. You see, here's the plot of the episode. The episode, now with Trent's sights set on River City, starts with our heroes traveling down the road to River City, and they end up seeing a giant tree, like this huge tree. And what they see, though, is a bunch of Swellow and Taillow on it. And while they're seeing all these Swellow and Taillow, we can also see that Coda is amazed by this, and as a Poketographer, he ends up taking the pictures while running downhill to get closer looks of it. And while he's doing that, he's not paying attention to where he's going, however, and only sees the tree, but he doesn't see that how close the tree is. He ends up hitting the tree because he's so close. And after this ends up happening, it shakes the tree's branches up a bit, and an egg falls and lands on Coda's head. Once it lands on Coda's head, we can see that it starts to hatch, and when it hatches, Taillow comes out of the egg, looks down and sees Coda, and Coda sees him. After that, however, we see that a bunch of Swellow and Taillow are pissed and fly down at Coda about to attack him. Once this happens, Trent and Luna come in with Hoot Hoot and Misdreavus respectively and use Hypnosis and, no, not Misdreavus, sorry, use Hoot Hoot and Kaitini, and they use Grass Whistle and Hypnosis respectively to put the Pokemon to sleep. What ends up happening after that, however, is there's a girl, she comes in and she sees that the Swellow and Taillow are being attacked. And when she sees that, she charges with her Swellow and tells Swellow to attack our heroes, so that Swellow almost hits our heroes directly. So then Luna decides to go ahead and battle the girl. And when Luna's battling the girl, she uses Cyndaquil. And this is basically how it starts off. Cyndaquil actually puts up a pretty good fight against Swellow by using a combination of Ember and Flame, no, it doesn't know Flame Wheel yet. Using a combination of Ember and Fire Spin and several moves like that. And when that's happening, the two actually fight each other off. Oh, and Cyndaquil also knows Smoke Screen. That's right. And during the fight, it looks like Luna and Cyndaquil have the upper hand, but then Swellow is about to go ahead and use a Sky Attack. While it's charging up for the Sky Attack, the battle gets interrupted by the girl's grandfather. And he tells them that there has to be some misunderstanding and that the kids that they see before them aren't responsible for Swellow and Taillow acting the way they're acting and them being attacked. So because of this, the little girl's revealed to be, not little, she's like the same age as our heroes. She's revealed to be Stacy. That's her name. And Stacy ends up apologizing to our heroes over the attack she did, although she still is suspicious of them. And she's still kind of mad about the whole situation. So then, due to the misunderstanding, the old man named Morris invites Trent, Luna, and Coda for some tea at his place. And when they all head back, we see that Taillow pops out of Coda's head. And when Taillow pops out of Coda's head, Trent and Luna notice it. And when they notice it, Morris and Stacy basically tell Coda that Taillow's not going to be leaving anytime soon. The reason of such being is the fact that when bird Pokemon like Taillow hatch from the eggs, the first person or Pokemon that they see, they consider to be a mother. Or in this case, that means that Coda is like a mother to this Taillow. Like, Taillow's not going to leave Coda's head because it's like a nest to him. And Taillow doesn't feel safe without Coda now because Coda is Taillow, or Taillow is Coda's. So what Stacy ends up doing is giving Coda a Pokeball so that at the very least Coda can capture Tailo in the Pokeball that way it won't be in Coda's head all the time. However, during most of the series, Tailo sees Coda's head as like a nest and hence the name of the title. So there's a running gag of Tailo just sort of popping out of Coda's head and staying in Coda's head a lot. So when that ends up happening, we learn. Oh, and Luna and Trent actually make fun of Coda for a little bit because of the fact that Taylor sees him as a mother, so they visualize Coda as a mama bird. It's a pretty funny scene. So then they start to go over the fact that the Tailo and Swellow from the Great Migration Tree that they saw before are being attacked, but they don't know by who. And Stacy's determined to figure out who's doing it so that she can take them down. Morris starts to conclude that maybe it's not people, but Pokemon that are attacking the Swellow and Tailo. She starts to wonder what exactly Pokemon would be responsible and why they haven't seen them all day. He starts to theorize that the flock of Pokemon that are attacking must be nocturnal Pokemon. Tailo and Swellow are diurnal Pokemon, which means they're only active during the day. That's why we didn't see any of the injured Pokemon from before, because the Tailo and Swellow are being attacked at night when they're asleep by another flock of Pokemon. So what Stacy decides to do is go in and stop the flock from attacking Tailo and Swellow's flock that's at the Great Migration Tree combined with her and Swellow because they want to go in and, defend the Great Migration Tree. Luna actually is against the idea of Stacy going in there and fighting off a whole flock of Pokemon alone, but her grandfather Morris has no problem with it because Stacy technically is the only one that can approach the Great Migration Tree without getting attacked because she has a Swellow. Her Swellow communicates with the Swellow and Tailo that are in the Great Migration Tree, which means she won't get harmed because, basically Swellow will say, hey, she's cool, she's with me. After this is said and done, it's also revealed because Stacy's a good battler that she's the one that's the most fitting for this job. At this point, Trent and Luna mostly wants to go ahead and help Stacy fight off the flock of Pokemon that are attacking Swellow and Tailo at the Great Migration Tree. Trent is at first reluctant by the idea, but then Luna convinces him because, Morris offered them a place to rest and some tea, so they kind of owe it to them to, help. And Coda's just completely out of the idea altogether because he's afraid. He doesn't want to fight a flock of Pokemon ready to tear him up. But it's funny because Trent is like, well, Morris just stated that we need a Swellow or Tailo in order to even approach the Great Migration Tree. Well, guess who has a newly hatched Tailo? Trent and Luna look both at Coda, and Coda is just not down with the idea at all. He's completely afraid, but they've gone over a plan and what they can do in order to get to the migration tree and fight off the flock and save the Tailo and Swellow. The plan involves Stacy and Coda going in first towards the afternoon, right before, sunset, before night falls. So they have to go out first, and then when they go out first, they'll signal Trent and Luna to come in afterwards. So they do just that. Stacy and Coda actually head towards the Great Migration Tree around sunset, and it's at this point that while they're waiting for the flock to approach, Stacy talks with Coda about Coda's newly hatched Tailo and how she looks at it, it reminds her of when her Swellow was first a baby Tailo. It's at this point that we get a flashback story of Stacy and Tailo back when it was a baby. And when she ends up seeing that the egg hatches, Tailo stays with her the whole time. At first, she takes care of Tailo and then is upset that she has to bring it back to where it came from. So she drops Tailo off at the Great Migration Tree. Also, this Tailo / Swellow is a girl, just for fun's sake. When she drops Tailo back off at the Great Migration Tree, Tailo does not go back. It actually keeps flying right back to Stacy, and that's because Stacy was the first person it saw when it hatched from the egg. So at this point, Stacy learned that she can keep Tailo and the two are together to this day as Swellow and Stacy. So at that point, she tells Coda, "Make sure you take good care of the Talo, even though you didn't plan on having Talo, because it reminds me a lot of our relationship between me and Swellow." Coda actually is touched by this story and promises that he'll do his best in order to take care of Talo. At the end of that, we see that sun has finally set and nightfall is finally approaching. We see that the flock of Pokemon that attack are Markrow and Honchkrow. Well, one Honchkrow, mostly just a bunch of Murkrows. So when they end up attacking the Talo and Swellow, which are exhausted from trying to defend the Great Migration Tree all day, Coda and Stacy go in and start to fight off. But at first, Coda then chooses Magnemite, and Magnemite floats in the air and uses Flash. This signals Luna and Trent, who are far away from the Migration Tree, to head down to the Migration Tree. It's at this point the fight is on between Coda, Magnemite, Talo, Stacy, and Swellow as they fight off the hordes of Murkrow. It's a little too much for Stacy and Coda to handle by themselves because of all the Murkrow plus the Honchkrow that's, the leader of them all. So what ends up happening is that Talo tries to fight a few Murkrow but ends up getting knocked down. Then Coda and Magnemite work together and use Flash to blind some of the Murkrow. And when that happens, they're surrounded by even more Murkrows and they're about to get attacked. Trent and Luna thankfully come in around this time and fight off the Murkrows, with Trent using Pichu and Luna using Misdreavus, and they end up fighting off the hordes of Murkrow. It's at this point that now that the herds of Murkrow are being fought off, this gives Stacy the chance to use Swellow in order to fight off against the head Honchkrow. Yeah, pun intended, I guess. And when they're fighting off against Honchkrow, they're doing well, but there's still a couple of Murkrows left that are fighting off against Swellow, so it's kind of outnumbered. Coda has to go in and use Talo and Magnemite to help her fight Honchkrow, because Honchkrow's really powerful. So what ends up happening is that they go in and try to fight off Swellow. They fight with Swellow in order to fight off against Honchkrow. So now Honchkrow has to deal with Magnemite, Talo, and Swellow. And at first, things seem to be going pretty bad because, with the Shadow Sneak, Dark Pulse, and Wing attacks being used on Stacy Swellow, thankfully Coda was able to temporarily blind Honchkrow for a while, and then Magnemite was able to get in a few hits. However, Honchkrow's fast and powerful, so Magnemite gets in one last Thunder Wave before it gets hit with Wing Attack and Dark Pulse and gets nailed, which knocks Magnemite out. At this point, all that there's left to do is to fight off against Honchkrow alone without Magnemite. Stacy states that she has one way she can beat Honchkrow, and that's if they use the Sky Attack that they were going to use on Luna and Cyndaquil at the beginning of the episode. They decide to go at this way. However, Coda needs to buy time in order for Sky Attack to work because, Sky Attack is a 2-turn move. So Talo and Coda go in and fight off against Honchkrow, and Honchkrow's about to finish Talo off because it has way too much power. Thankfully, the Thunder Wave from earlier that Magnemite used paralyzes Honchkrow just enough to keep it, frozen, or just enough to keep it immobilized. And after that, Coda tells Talo to move out the way, and Stacy's Swellow has enough power gathered and uses Sky Attack head-on Honchkrow, thus taking Honchkrow down. When Honchkrow's taken down, it flies away as well as the rest of the Murkrow, and they leave the Migration Tree alone. The Talo and Swellow, while they are weakened now, they're saved and they're happy and they're glad that things have been settled. Our heroes head back to Stacy and Morris's house, and the next morning, they're all set up and ready to go. So now that they're set up and ready to go and hit the road, we see that Talo is happy that it was able to help fight off Pokemon in the Migration Tree, and it's happy that it's with Coda, so it sticks with Coda. Our heroes are about to hit the road, and they're actually congratulating Coda for such a great job that he did. They talk to Stacy, and Stacy actually gives Coda some bird food that he needs in order to feed Talo, as well as some other things that he would need. He asked, well, what about your Swallow? Doesn't she need this? And at this point we learned that Stacy earlier that morning made the decision to release her Swallow so that it can stay at the Great Migration Tree and defend the Tailo and Swallow at the Great Migration Tree. It hurt both of them for her to make this decision, but it was a decision she thought was the best. It's at this point that our heroes are walking down the road and they actually see Stacy's Swallow flying past them and they wave at it. At this point, Coda looks at Tailo, which is on top of his head, and they journey forth and the episode ends. Honestly, when I made this episode, I didn't plan on having such a like character developed one episode character, because when you look at it, I'm just gonna say it right now, we're not gonna see Stacy ever again. Like, maybe if I feel it, she may cameo something, but Stacy in this series is pretty much done for the day. She was basically a plot device character in order to bring our heroes to the current situation that brought Coda to getting a Tailo. I didn't think I was going to develop Stacy to the point that I did. And while I was writing and noticed that Stacy was getting a lot of character development, which in turn was giving Coda development based on the fact that he got a newly hatched Tailo, I was actually pretty proud of the progress. I was proud of that. I was proud of the fact that I was able to make a character that's not even our heroes more in depth than I needed to for the sake of the plot. I so I hate it when that happens though, because will grow really attached to a character, but I don't want this cast to be huge for a series that's about 100 episodes long, and it's a fanfic series, so I don't want like these large amount of characters, because the more characters you have, the more you have to develop them. So what ends up happening is that I have to spread the development across different characters rather than just consistently doing the characters that I already have. Because I'm a sucker for character development. So when I write a new character, I need to make sure that the series, the 100 episode series, can allot for the time needed for their development. Otherwise, I'm developing a character and that development's going nowhere. But I was proud of the fact that this episode was a bit more character driven than I thought it would be. The connections that Stacy has with her Swallow, and the fact that I made a flashback scene involving her and it as a Tailo, and then combining that with the fact that Coda now has a Tailo made it like a passing down of the torch, if you will, if that made any sense. And it definitely shows that I was able to step Coda's game up while Trent and Luna were preoccupied with the Murkrow. Having Coda use Magnemite and Tailo to fight off against Honchkrow definitely made him a lot more braver, at least in this particular situation. While he's not as strong as Trent and Luna in terms of battling, he did step up and manage to help Stacy defeat the Honchkrow, or at least buy time so that Swallow can use Sky Attack. So those were some nice features that I put in. I love. I don't know how people will feel about the running gag of Tailo popping up in Coda's head and using it as a nest, but it was something that I've grown really attached to, so it was something that I wasn't going to discard anytime soon. Tailo, while he's powerful, I decided to make his character development a bit needy just for the sake of the plot, because he was born basically in Coda's hair, so I figured the most appropriate would make him very dependent on Coda, at least at first. And yeah, we have a new Pokemon on the team, so it's a new member of the family, with Trent having Eevee, Hoot Hoot, and Pichu, with Luna having Katini, Cyndaquil, and Misdreavus, and now Coda's got Tailo on the team along with his Magnemite. So yeah, it's good that I was able to make the family grow a little bit more here, just simply because we needed it, and it was great character development for Coda, like I said. I also liked the strategy that Luna had developed in order to get the attention of the Murkrows and Honchkrows so that they could join the battle later. By that time, the Talos and Swallows wouldn't be targeting them because they'd be already helping in the battle, instead of, having to charge at them at front like Stacy and Coda did. But Stacy and Coda have the exception of having both a Tailo and a Swallow, so they weren't going to be targeted. So yeah, I like that little attention to detail I went ahead and put. Uh, I like a lot of the stuff that I put in here, and yeah, it was fun. I had more fun making this episode than I originally thought because the plan behind this episode wasn't to be that big. But with that said, the next episode is episode 7, which is titled Katini and the Cotton Ball Festival. So I'll see you all then, everybody. Tyrone the God 3 out.